Glens Falls. It's 8 o'clock.
Good morning. This is Northern Light for Wednesday, November 15th. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe.
New York's highest court, the Court of Appeals, is set to hear oral arguments over the state's redistricting case today that could determine who has control over the House of Representatives.
We'll talk with a WIC breastfeeding coordinator about what it's like to support people through the journey of parenting.
In the North Country, there's definitely a need for our services. We have a lot of rural communities that are hard to reach out to people, food insecurity areas where, they have to drive 20 to 40 minutes to get to a store.
Also, the Ogdensburg Bridge and Port Authority got $1 million state grant to build a child care center.
And ahead of Thanksgiving, Chef Curtis Hem shares a recipe for an unsung hero of the vegetable world, celeriac.
If you're familiar with celeriac, you're going to love it. If you're not familiar with celeriac, you're going to think I'm crazy when I tell you to go buy this thing because it's this hairy root ball, and it's kind of scary looking. So, but like I say, don't judge a book by its cover.
All of that and more is coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us.
Broadcast of Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio is supported by Mountain Orthotic and Prosthetic Services, a full-service practice committed to providing care for patients of all ages, with offices in Lake Placid, Plattsburgh, and Malone. Details and referrals at mountainonp.com. And Blue Seed Studios, a multidisciplinary art center featuring classes for adults and youth, concerts, art exhibits, and more. BLUseedstudios.org.
This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe. Control of the House of Representatives could be decided in New York's highest court today. The Court of Appeals is hearing oral arguments over the state's redistricting case. A mid-level appellate court sided with Democrats in July in their attempt to overturn the state's congressional maps. Republicans, led by the organization Stop NY Corruption, appealed that to the Court of Appeals. WRVO's Ava Pukach reports.
Stop NY Corruption says changing congressional maps makes it harder for representatives to represent their constituents and want the current maps in place until the 2030 census when the Constitution says they are to be redrawn. Republican Representatives Claudia Tenney and Brandon Williams have both been affected by changing congressional maps. Tenney moved into the new 24th congressional district, but Williams has yet to move into the 22nd congressional district. Williams has pointed to redistricting uncertainty when asked about moving into the district he represents.
And I like to say, just in the last 2 years, that even though I've never run for any office, I'm now in my third, almost fourth race for Congress in just 24 months. That's how quickly the lines have changed. That's how this has distorted the process.
New York's current congressional districts were drawn by a court after Republicans said the way the state legislature drew them was unconstitutional. Democrats say the current maps were only supposed to be in place for the 2022 election and want the state's independent redistricting commission to get another crack at it for the 2024 election. Former Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin says there could be both intentional and unintentional mistakes if the Court of Appeals rules the maps need to be redrawn.
It would be a disaster. It would be rushed, and New Yorkers would end up not having their voice heard. There would be a lot of confusion. People won't know who their members of Congress are, and it's likely that they wouldn't be able to get the maps done in time, and that rush job would end up resulting in whatever new maps they create getting tossed, and who knows what's next.
4 New York congressional districts under current maps, including Williams's, are considered toss-ups by Cook Political Report for the 2024 election. In Syracuse, I'm Ava Pukach for North Country Public Radio.
The Ogdensburg Bridge and Port Authority has received $1 million state grant, but it's not for the railroad, or the airport, or the bridge to Canada. It's to build a big child care center, which they see as an investment in the economic vitality of Ogdensburg. This grant was the last big piece of funding the project needed to get started. Amy Feiereisel reports.
The goal is a big child care center at the Ogdensburg Bridge and Port Authority's Commerce Park. It'll serve 125 children and be open to all residents of Ogdensburg and surrounding communities. Steve Lawrence is the executive director of the OBPA.
We know how to build buildings. We know how to take care of them. We are not in the business of child care in the sense of actually providing those services.
That's why they've partnered with the Arc of Jefferson St. Lawrence, a not-for-profit which runs several child care facilities. The biggest hurdle to getting started has been funding. It's an ambitious project and will represent the largest child care facility in the North Country. On Monday, the OBPA was awarded just shy of $1 million for the project through New York's Regional Economic Development Council awards.
That is almost a quarter of the funding that we need.
Alongside another $2 million from the USDA and $1 million from the Northern Border Regional Commission, Lawrence says that means the OBPA has 80% of what it needs.
We did the project feasibility, we've built the team, and we've secured a site, gotten through most of the financing, not all of that.
But it's enough to move forward. On Monday night, OBPA had a child care committee meeting and are officially putting the call out to engineering and consulting firms
that can design a child care facility. So that'll be put out on the street to get proposals from regional and local engineering firms that do that kind of work.
They plan to choose a firm in the next few months, break ground in the summer of 2024, and open for the school year in the fall of 2025. Lawrence hopes the facility, once open, will be reliable, affordable child care for Ogdensburg families.
In turn, that frees up those people for the workforce. You know, that's kind of a overarching thing that coming out of that's what I'd like to see.
Ogdensburg hasn't had a child care center in over 2 decades. This will be a massive step forward for child care in the city and St. Lawrence County. Amy Feiereisel, North Country Public Radio.
That Ogdensburg grant is part of a larger announcement the state made yesterday. 13 other economic development projects in the North Country will share roughly $1.1 million in state grants. Catherine Wheeler has more on some of those.
The Regional Economic Development Council's grants will boost nonprofits, jobs programs, business incubators, and craft beverage companies across New York State. Other awards in the North Country include Assemble Right, getting $500,000 to make steel frame flood barrier systems in Plattsburgh. The Adirondack Historical Association will now be able to replace boilers and chillers for the Adirondack Experience Museum. Sackett's Harbor Hotel will get $132,000 to redo the lobby, increase hotel capacity by more than 600, and add an elevator for accessibility. And 4 breweries and 1 distillery in the North Country will be able to expand production thanks to the state funding. Catherine Wheeler, North Country Public Radio.
You're listening to Northern Light right here on North Country Public Radio. It's 8 minutes past 8. Good morning. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. Coming up, celeriac is downright ugly, gnarled, and covered with tangled, hairy roots. But hack away the exterior, and Chef Curtis Hem says you'll find a simple but noble addition to your Thanksgiving meal. We'll have more coming up in just a few minutes here on Northern Light.
Colton guitarist Paul Myers. Northern Light is supported by Piano by Nature, presenting Tapestries, 2 concerts featuring music from Turkey and Italy, performed by double bassist Volkan Orhan and friends, November 18th and 19th in Elizabethtown. Details at pianobynature.org. And by St. Lawrence Nurseries, Potsdam, accepting orders now through April 12th for cold hardy fruit and nut trees. Details at slngrow.com.
The New York State Education Department could make high school graduation requirements more flexible. WWNY-TV reports the department's Blue Ribbon Commission released a report that recommends lowering the number of Regents exams high school students have to take. Currently, students take 5 Regents exams over 4 years. A recommendation says students could be assessed by additional projects and presentations. The commission also recommends switching from 3 diploma options to 1. WWNY says the state's Board of Regents will take time to go over the report before making any decisions.
St. Lawrence County Public Health now has $400,000 to work on the area's health care infrastructure. North Country Now reports the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention grants will help strengthen public health departments nationwide. The funding could be used to hire more staff, upgrade workplaces, and conduct training. County officials say the funds may be used to help socially and economically disadvantaged communities in the North Country. The grant's funding comes over a 5-year period.
Many North Country families rely on WIC services. That's the federal program Women, Infants, and Children. It provides nutritious foods and educational resources for families and children who don't earn very much money. Today, we'll hear from one woman who works at WIC about the joys and struggles of supporting local families through pregnancy and parenthood. Anna Williams-Bergen has this North Country at Work story.
WIC is probably best known for the vouchers that help families buy food and formula for their babies. But they provide lots of other services, like nutrition counseling and breastfeeding support. That's what Rosetta Landis does.
A lot of what we do is also just supporting the whole journey of parenting and the different stages and different needs along the way.
Landis works for WIC at the North Country Family Health Center in Lowville. She started there over a decade ago as a breastfeeding peer counselor. I met her at the Cream Cheese Festival in Lowville, so that's why there's some music in the background.
I'm a mom of 3, and I breastfed my 3 children and found it just really rewarding, fulfilling as a mom to meet their needs in that way and to provide that really healthy, good start. So when I heard that WIC had a job that was just about doing that and supporting families with breastfeeding, I was all over that.
Now, Landis works at WIC as a nutritionist, breastfeeding coordinator, and a certified lactation counselor. She helps people decide if they want to breastfeed and then teaches them about how to do it. Nationwide, only about half of the people eligible for WIC use their services. Landis says that's because people don't realize they're eligible or WIC is hard for them to access.
In the North Country, there's definitely a need for our services. We have a lot of rural communities that are hard to reach out to people, food insecurity areas where, they have to drive 20 to 40 minutes to get to a store.
In her years with WIC, Landis says the breastfeeding rate has kept going up.
It's kind of why I got into working at WIC in the first place, so I love to see that increase. But I do see a lot of women really interested. They want to do the best they can for their babies. And once they learn about breastfeeding, then they're really engaged with wanting to do that.
One of the most pressing times for her services was in 2022. Contamination issues caused the nation's biggest baby formula producer, Abbott, to recall products and pause production at a major plant. That set off a nationwide shortage. Stories of people scrambling to feed their babies were everywhere. Landis says that the WIC staff were on the front lines.
It was really hard, very challenging. We work in a field that we're very proactive and we want to be moving forward and supportive, and it felt kind of like taking some steps back to just get people the basics.
Beyond just access, people had trouble getting the specific kinds of formula that was right for their babies. Landis says she worked with people whose babies ended up in the hospital.
When the formula was in the shortest supply, we were fielding calls daily, multiple calls a day, from parents very desperate to find formula in the North Country.
Landis says the shortage actually had a big impact on women's decisions to breastfeed.
We would talk to pregnant women who had heard about the shortages, and we're like, oh, maybe I will consider breastfeeding after all. Maybe that is a good option because it didn't It didn't sound appealing to them before, but the fear of not being able to find food for your baby kind of outweighs what you thought you might be more comfortable with.
Landis says the chaos of the shortage has mostly passed, and she's back to helping parents.
I think the satisfying stories are when you meet particularly young moms that maybe are not necessarily ready to be parents, but find themselves, preparing to be a parent. They don't know a lot yet. They're not just figuring out as they go. And you see them really come out into a new way of understanding the world around them through the eyes of their children.
Landis says she loves being able to help people at such vulnerable times, whether it's the tough spots or the victories. For North Country Public Radio's North Country at Work project, I'm Anna Williams-Bergen in Lowville.
North Country at Work is a long-running project of NCPR that collects photos and stories about the work history of our region. Funding for this programming was provided in part by the New York State Department of Education.
You're listening to Northern Light right here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. In just a minute, Chef Curtis Hem's salad recipe transforms celeriac, or celery root, into a delicious side dish for the Thanksgiving table. That's in just a few minutes. Then stick around after the show for Bird Note coming up at 8:42. But first, Todd has a look at the weather for us.
Partly cloudy skies today, sunshine tomorrow, rain on Friday, maybe Saturday as well, or maybe some snow showers through the weekend. This afternoon, highs in the 40s, topping off in the low 50s in places like Watertown and Glens Falls. Winds out of the south-southeast. Tomorrow, the Weather Service says partly to mostly sunny, continued relatively mild. Highs near 50 on Thursday. Could see highs in the 50s near 60 on Friday with a good chance of rain. And then cooler through the weekend. Highs 30s near 40 on Saturday and Sunday. 34 and sunny right now in Canton.
With Thanksgiving just a week away, Chef Curtis Hem says now is the time to start planning side dishes for the big meal. Chef Curtis lives in the Champlain Valley, owns the Carriage House Cooking School in Peru, New York, and is the executive chef at the View restaurant at the Mirror Lake Inn Resort and Spa in Lake Placid. And he joins us every month with ideas for eating local and with the seasons.
Yeah, one of Chef Curtis's mottos is never judge a root vegetable by its skin. And in this case, it's celeriac. Chef Curtis says it makes a great side salad that pairs well with the Thanksgiving turkey.
If you're familiar with celeriac, you're going to love it. If you're not familiar with celeriac, you're going to think I'm crazy when I tell you to go buy this thing because it's this hairy root ball.
Right.
And it's kind of scary looking. But like I say, don't judge a book by its cover. This is a great root vegetable that has a wonderful presence on a Thanksgiving table. It lends itself as an ingredient to a lot of different flavors, and this is one that really takes on kind of a Dijonnaise type of dressing. And it really has a nice little crunch, kind of like a coleslaw, but it's better, in my opinion. So celeriac is just a root vegetable that comes in a kind of a ball the size of a softball. You peel that, and then you can grate it, or you can chop it, or, if you have a food processor, we're trying to get it into stick format. So 2-inch sticks, like what I would call a julienne. So like an eighth of an inch by an eighth of an inch by 2 inches long. Mm-hmm. And you can use a mandolin and slice out these planks and then just go ahead and slice sticks out of that. That works really great.
Right.
If you have a food processor, 9 times out of 10, they have a julienne disc that you can use.
Right.
Worst case, you can just grate it and use grated celeriac, which works fine. It's actually really great. So we make a dressing with it. It's really simple. So once we have our peeled and cut or grated celeriac, we're going to make a dressing. So we're going to use some mayonnaise, some Dijon mustard. I really do like stone ground Dijon mustard. I think it's fantastic. If you want a little heat to this, you like a little spicy food, feel free to buy the mustard with the horseradish. Some fresh chives, which seem to never die around here. Cider vinegar, I like that apple component. Then a little bit of salt, a little bit of black pepper, and you thin it out with a little bit of lemon juice. And you toss all this together, so it's what I would call a combination salad. Everything's mixed together in one bowl. Put it on a platter, sprinkle some chives on top, a couple parsley leaves, and you have an absolutely beautiful side dish.
Yeah, this kind of makes me think of if you're maybe looking for one more side dish for the Thanksgiving meal, this is something that's easy and quick enough to make that you could throw it together and ask for the celeriac at your farmer's market or your local co-op. Chances are they've got it.
Yeah, a grocery store won't have it. And, celeriac's not cheap. It's a heavy, dense vegetable. It takes a long time to grow.
Yeah.
So, but it's a vegetable that we can lengthen, meaning that I can get a lot of portions out of one. So, and we don't need a lot of this, but it's such a unique flavor. But it also pairs well with the turkey. It'll pair well with pickles. It'll pair well with the ubiquitous cranberry sauce. It just works with everything on your Thanksgiving table. I can't think of a dish that would go on a Thanksgiving table that this wouldn't stand up to and complement as well. So
I like that idea of that sweet, earthy, crisp flavor coming out in this.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of, a celeriac, the flavor kind of reminds me a little bit of jicama, but without that kind of crisp note. It's crunchy, but it's not light in flavor. Kind of reminds me of parsnip, but not as sweet.
Right, more peppery or something.
Yeah, and I don't even think there's a lot of heat to it. It's just more earthy.
Yeah.
But it's such a great vegetable. We use actually celeriac at the end to thicken our mushroom portage. So we keep our mushroom soup gluten-free that way. Because it absorbs, it's a starch, but when you puree it after it's cooked, it doesn't get gummy like a potato would. Where a potato can get really, really pasty and bind together too much. Celeriac doesn't do that. It's a starch, so it will absorb liquid and thicken, and it just offers a real baseline kind of like what celery does. It's just, it's there, but it doesn't really stand out in any way, shape, or form.
Chef Curtis Hem lives in the Champlain Valley, owns the Carriage House Cooking School in Peru, New York, and is the executive chef at the View Restaurant at the Mirror Lake Inn Resort and Spa in Lake Placid. And a little later this morning, you'll find his recipe for his celeriac salad, perfect for the Thanksgiving meal, on our website, ncpr.org. And remember, as Chef Curtis says, grated celeriac is really great. That's a tune called Snowfall by Hot Club of Saratoga, jazz in the spirit of 1930s Paris. And you can catch Hot Club of Saratoga. They've got a gig tomorrow night, Thursday night from 6 to 9 at Mouzon House. Join the Hot Club Trio in Saratoga at Mouzon House tomorrow night from 6 to 9.
You're listening to Northern Light right here on North Country Public Radio. It's about 8:25. Good morning. I'm Monica Sandreski here with Todd Moe, and we want to remind you about a few of the events going on throughout the region in the next few weeks. Don't forget to head to the opening reception of the new exhibit at the Woodland Gallery at the Tannery Pond Community Center. It's called The Art of Illustration and features the work of 3 children's book illustrators in the Adirondacks, including Jan Palmer and also Anthony Riccici. He's exhibiting works from his comic book series, Color World, an Adirondack adventure about a little boy whose drawings come to life. He's also illustrated books that won 9 National Book Awards. Also on display, you can see Kate Hartley's work at the gallery. She's known for her still life watercolors and the North Creek Mosaic Project, and she's exhibiting illustrations from the books Good Morning Loon and Hiking to the Top, depicting Adirondack scenes that you may recognize. You can find out more at tannerypond.org. The reception is coming up this Friday evening from 5 until 7 o'clock.
You've got another 10 days or so to check out the Fiber Arts Show in the Cantwell Room at the Saranac Lake Free Library. It continues through Saturday, November 25th. Some fabulous fiber arts from folks in the Saranac Lake area and around the Adirondacks. We have a preview as well, or at least a conversation with some of the folks who put that show together. Check that out on our website at ncpr.org. And also in Saranac Lake, Adirondack Stage Rats continue The Roommate by Jen Silverman, performances at Pendragon Theater in Saranac Lake this Friday and Saturday night at 7 and Sunday afternoon at 3, the 17th and 18th, and then the 19th at 3 in the afternoon. It is a powerful story about personal transformation, love, friendship, and identity. The Roommate at Pendragon Theater in Saranac Lake.
And we always want to put in a plug for the Adirondack Folk School in Lake Luzerne. They do a lot to talk about and educate about traditional arts in the Adirondacks. Coming up this weekend, they have a class on making wooden cross-country skis with Jim Schreiner. You can learn how to build old-time traditional cross-country skis and preserve a piece of North Country history. Learn to cut, plane, bend, and use a variety of woodworking techniques to complete your own set of wooden skis. You can find out more from the AdirondackFolkSchool.org. And I have a feeling that someone very special to all of us has actually taken that class before, right, Todd?
Hey, when you go to take the wooden ski class with Jim, say hi to him from Todd Moe. Tell him I sent you. It's a great class. Jim is a fantastic woodworker and artist. You'll have a lot of fun. You'll come away with your own handmade wooden cross-country skis. Check that out at the Adirondack Folk School.
And you use your wooden skis.
Love them.
That's
Absolutely
what you ski on.
Love them. Yeah, they're fabulous. And Jim is a great guy.
Fantastic. Find out more from the AdirondackFolkSchool.org. And before we head out, I do want to put in a plug for the Dean's List Indie Rock A to Z special that's coming up Monday afternoon from 3 to 5. And host Doyle Dean wants your requests. Email your song or artist pick now to doyle@ncpr.org. Then listen to the Dean's List on Monday as Doyle plays through the alphabet using your favorites. New indie, old indie, and everything in between. Send a request today to doyle@ncpr.org. And tune in Monday from 3 to 5 for Indie Rock A to Z. Or catch the show on the rewind at ncpr.org/Dean's List. That is it for the show for the day. Morning edition continues in just a minute. Then after that, it's the Marketplace Morning Report coming up between 8:51 and 9 o'clock. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe. Thanks for listening. Be well.